Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Queer Prism 256 podcast. Queer Prism 256 podcast is a podcast that shares day-to-day life experiences of LGBTQ women in Uganda. Today we have a very special guest, Pepe Julian Onziema, in studio, the one and only Pepe. And we are going to be talking about IDAHOBIT, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. So Pepe, what is your understanding of IDAHOBIT and how are you going to celebrate it this year, given the current climate in Uganda?
CJ and LJ, thank you so much for having me on Queer Prism. And IDAHOBIT is, like you've introduced it, it's the International Day Against Phobias based on identity and sexuality. It's celebrated annually on 17th May. And for me, what it means is that we dedicate a special day to focus on the impact of homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, and all other identity and sexuality phobias. How I intend to celebrate or commemorate it this year is, I think for me particularly, is take time to heal. I'm not planning on anything public for myself. I think I owe it to myself. After all the damage the parliamentarians have done in engaging with them, I need to take a day off and just do my rituals, my sage, eat nice, just practice all my healing practices. That's how I personally celebrate.
What inspired you to become a human rights defender and how long have you been involved in advocacy work?
It's really been a journey. Human rights, I don't think even at the time I knew particularly what they were, the concept of human rights. But what I know is that I was raised in a way to respect other people and protect as well. So I grew up kind of in different homes, and sometimes we'd be like over 15 kids in a home. The way we were treated, there was some way of equality that all of us were taken the same. Even if I had cousins who had rich parents, there were others who didn't, have anything at home, that we were going to school and stuff like that. So seeing that balance of how we're being raised, it's like, okay, if I ever have a home, I think this is how I will be. But when I was 15, I was in high school, and the newspaper back then in the 90s published names of people my age, 15, 16, 17, who they suspected to be gay in schools. So these things started a long time ago. The propaganda began a long time ago. And they were actually published in the newspaper. And I was like, what the hell? Like, people have the right to education. So I started to kind of ask questions about the constitution, about rights and stuff like that. So I started educating myself around that time. And what that led to was me leaving home just after Form 4. That was about 17. I was going to my 17th. It was like during vacation. So anything, I had a step parent in the house, and we were not clicking. And I was like, no, I know my rights. I deserve to be in a safe home. I deserve to go to school and all that. But at that point, I knew that I was going to lose my education, being paid for school fees and stuff. But I didn't care. So fast forward from that, in my late teens, maybe 19, 20, I met other people who were like me, and I was like, hey, okay, we're not now 2 people, we're not 3 people, we're 5, we're 10, we're 20 people, and we talked about, let's get together, let's do something about all these things that we are going through. And so now that's when advocacy kicked in. Maybe at that point we didn't even know that it was advocacy. First, what we knew is that we're talking about the oppression that we were feeling, one to each other, and then now we're opening our minds up to reading beyond what we were reading, because newspapers were also publishing in the early 2000s. And yeah, so that's how my advocacy work kicked in. And I should tell you that it was never my first choice. I knew I could do it, but along the way I learned that advocacy meant putting your face, putting your life, and speaking out, and just being so public. And I didn't want that. The public part I didn't want, so I was like, I can like write speeches for people. I can give tips, I can do strategies and I believe that my strength is really like in building strategies. And I'm best behind, not being on the mic, but being behind
curtains.
Okay. Have you experienced any form of transphobia or homophobia from a person close to you or the public? If yes, please share your experience.
Yes, I have. I actually didn't know homophobia and transphobia. Many people experience it in their homes. For me, I experienced it from outside. And it was a shock. I was like, what? People who don't accept, who don't know about who they are, like, it was a shocker for me. So, first was when I was actually joining, should I mention, joining this high school. And then they told me, I had a French cat with what was that one called? Backbush. I don't know what it's called, backbush or something. But you're going to school, so they had to shave my hair. But I told them they cannot shave this one. So the tiny one at the back was plated, and then because I didn't know what the school was like, so I tried to put a plaster, so it looked like I had a problem. Until after some days, they saw some tail-like thing. But when my elder brother was there, who took me to school that time and spoke to the headmistress and said, this child, if in case of anything, any punishment or what, call me first. So they're like, you can't be in shorts, you can't be in whatever, you have to wear, what are those uniforms called?
Pinafore, the dresses. Pinafore.
That one. I was like, but I don't know. I was like, hell no. And remember, I'm a teenager, and ideally in Uganda you have no say.
Yeah.
But I was raised to speak. So I think the first time was at school when they said they were calling me Chimanman,
Chakula Sajja.
and I didn't know Luganda, so I felt like I'm like what is this these guys are saying? So when I found out what it was, and then like sometimes when I would go, I used to have poor eating habits. I still do, but it was terrible then. And when I would go to the dining, you would see some people moving out. I was like, okay, to hell, we're going to sit here. So I think that was one of the first times that I felt that. And then also, most of it I could say is in school. And then there was a period, maybe now in adulthood, I would say, for instance, the Why Are You Gay interview. It was outright, both homophobia and transphobia.
Yeah.
Public display.
Public, and was in the public. So those would be those two, I would say, kind of
Okay.
experiences.
How about in the community itself, the LGBT community?
I've actually forgotten another significant thing that happened. So, boxes and labels and stuff sometimes really constrict you. But I would say that knew that I was different, even within the community itself. I knew I was different. My attraction is largely to who a person is. It's not really mainly that. It's based on gender. And I remember when we started organizing in the early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003, there was a guy who we saw each other and were madly attracted to each other. And I found out later that he had come to Dizzy Drop House to meet someone, to meet a gay man who happens to be a friend of mine. We didn't know then. And for me it was a bit discomforting because I was like, okay, how do I express like in public? But we were playing pool, we were having fun, and we ended up making out, and then community was gossiping. The gossip was too much, and they were like, oh, I'm pretending to be who I am, I'm attracted, and I'm like, but you don't know who I am. You don't even know if we're having sex or not having sex. We only made out, and your minds are going out. So for me, that now that knowing some more terms and stuff, that was from the community. That was a display of transphobia, but also phobia for pansexuals. Because I found out the word for the way I express is pansexuality, and it was horrible.
Yeah, I think I remember that time.
You remember that too?
I remember because actually it was so confusing because, okay, back then, to differentiate between a transgender person and a pansexual person. So at that time it was so confusing because pansexual was a new term. So someone trying to understand that, oh, you can be attracted to this because Pepe openly say that he's pan. So I'm like, if you go back and read, you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. But then for someone who is not willing to understand, they will be like, me, I thought he's only attracted to this certain gender, or
And I think that's also one of the things that we have, that we've adopted the binary and heteronormative way of thinking. That even for us within the community, you expect that if you've told people that you're a gay man, you have to be with a gay man.
Oh yes, boxing.
For instance, you can't be a gay man and you're attracted to a trans man.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yes.
So because we're like, no, if you do that, then you cease to be gay. No, you don't. And also, sexuality is an individual experience. It's not a public or community experience. So
what are some of the biggest challenges transgender individuals face in the community, both the LGBT community and the general public? And what are some of the potential solutions to these issues?
I think some of the challenges, or the main challenges that transgender people face, is one is the trauma of the binary, which is you have to fit in one of the two. You can't. It's like the public expects you, if you're a trans woman, you have to go all the way and be different. They want to see. It's not even you. If you're a trans man, also use the whole curve and be what they want to see. So we go through that. But also there's a blend of homophobia and transphobia that trans people go through. Because, for instance, our laws talk mainly around homosexuality. But you will find, when you look at the case index of how many people have actually suffered violence, you find that it's trans people. because trans people sort of are like the face of homosexuality to the public. The public believes that for you to be gay, you're sort of crossing over. Or if an effeminate man, a masculine woman or person, then they will say that you are, you know. So because of that, there's been a lot of violence towards transgender people. There are people who want to transition medically, but there's no services for transition in this country. But also internally for us, it's we internalize heterosexuality, by the way, and also the hetero-binariness. And then the other thing is we don't take time, majority of us don't take time to self-accept and want to rush into medical transition. Transition begins from you knowing who you are, accepting who you are, and just walking the journey for yourself before you put your transgenderness into a medical person's hands. So you'll find that there's also a lot of ignorance and misconceptions of what transition is. That you find people ending up to do very extreme things to their bodies, which affects their mental health. And mentioning mental health, that is another impact on transgender people. I think it's even twice as much on transgender people than it is on just people with their sexual identity, because for us it's the sexual identity and then there's a physical and mental identity that we have to transverse and overcome challenges. Solutions, there needs to be services that are again diverse, that trans people can actually go and receive therapies or counseling. Actual medicines need to be there, like hormones and so on. But also education of our health care service providers needs to be done together with also trans people, because like I mentioned, there's a lot of ignorance among the trans people about even being trans. There are some people who think they are trans because they are masculine expressive, but not necessarily, or they're effeminate.
What are your thoughts on the public display of homophobia and transphobia in Parliament during the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023?
Quite painful, because these are people that benefit from our taxes. These are people who have children who are queer or LGBT. It was really painful to watch, and just thinking that these are people's parents, they are also people's children, and that they are also queer people in Parliament, and they are just experiencing that first-hand violence. You know, I think it really shows the lack of coherence with the Constitution, the lack of leadership, actual people leadership. There are lots of people who are mentally affected that day. Throughout the bill process, we've been seeing that display of homophobia and transphobia in the legislature. And for me, who has been in the corridors of Parliament speaking to parliamentarians and just hearing the ones that I've laughed with, the ones that I've broken bread with, saying I or yay, and I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? To a point where I think at some point I just got numb and got so indifferent, and I'm like, fuck, let them do whatever they want to do with the bill. It's not going to change who we are. So, like, I kind of rested my energy, and I'm like, let me not use too much of it on these people, because they are going to do whatever they want to do, despite them knowing that what they are doing is wrong. You know, And that basically legitimized and quote unquote like legalized homophobia and transphobia in this country, because the parliamentarians were like that. I tell you, just seeing people that I knew just saying yes, was painful. But I it's unfortunate that the burden of understanding where the parliamentarians were coming from is on us. I think it's unfair for them to expect us to understand why. They voted that way because there was too much intimidation, or because it's political suicide. But when you don't stand up for something, then you're standing up for nothing.
It was so disgusting to see members of parliament making fun of people's sexual orientation and also their gender identity, and actually they're even putting down women, quote unquote, because they kept on making fun of what is a world without women. Clearly it was like they see women as seeing women as sex objects. What will I do with a man? What is a world without women? What is a world without men? So for them it was just a thing of sex.
It's sex.
Open display of that, and it was really disgusting. Because this is an informed sector of society, but if they are
presumed,
yes, okay,
because clearly they are not.
They are not, yeah.
Because if they were doing this on camera, then really, what do they do when there is no one watching them?
Exactly.
But it also shows that they are ignorant at some point.
They choose
to
be ignorant.
But also, I don't know if you watched, but the only person who voted against Honorable Fox Odoy, how the speaker casually calls him homosexual. Like he's not, but you keep doing that. That's part of homophobia. That you're basically trying to show him that you're not accepted in this house
as well,
because of your take. But personally, I'm really proud of him. He's only one, but he stood for something, and history will really judge him according to that.
And he's still standing regardless of the comments that they
He did that in 2009 to 2014. He stood alone, and again he stood alone. And I'm saying alone because during when they passed it first, he wrote the minority report with the Honorable Quiz. But now during this second time after the president returned it, Honorable Quizzer stepped away. But you could see when he spoke, he said, I vote yeah for now. And the speaker said, no, there's nothing like for now. It has to be you're either voting yes or you're voting no. And you could feel he had a bit of a shaky voice, and he said yes, that he voted for the bill. And what did she say? Thank you for seeing the light. Such nonsense.
What is your take on internalized homophobia, and how can community members combat that?
It's hard. It's hard being born in religious families, being born in communities where there's your business is another person's business. So when we grow up, of course, you're trying to understand who you are in the Christian or Muslim sense or religious sense. You're trying to understand yourself in academic sense, biological understanding of yourself. And because, we spend about 18 or 21 years of our lives. In Uganda probably, or in African homes, is probably people move out of home when they're 25. So imagine from the time you're born to 25, all you're hearing is your parents' voice and your church's voice. And you're queer. It's very difficult. First of all, you're feeling indebted to the church and to your family. So it's difficult. But we also spend a lot of time out of home, and those are the school years. There are things that we learn, our minds open up, we do research for ourselves. Not a lot. I think the education system doesn't allow us to really expand our knowledge that much. So at the end of the day, what I would really say is that know yourself. Know yourself, discover yourself, research yourself, do research on yourself so that you know who you are, and then you're able to begin to fight that. Yeah. We have to have blocks for external voices, because external voices are what make us internalize the hate towards us. Because I'm wondering what LG is thinking about me. And I'm like, then I try to behave accordingly. You know, I suppress myself. What is CJ thinking about me? So my life is all about what people think about me. It's not what do I think about myself. So we have to start thinking about ourselves and caring for ourselves more. That will help us gradually get rid of self-stigmatization and what was the question? It was about
internalized
homophobia. Do you think homophobia and transphobia are more on the rise as compared to 12 years ago, with the fact that people can now access information?
I think that over the years people have been educated and they know. And I believe that what we see on TV, social media, are contrary to what is real. A lot of people don't give two fucks. Who you're sleeping with, how you look. They are poor. They just want to go make money so that they can slay the way you slay. So they don't really have like much time for that. But the other 50 is that because of the religious fundamentalists, yes, it has forced people who are even queer. Now the internalized homophobia and transphobia displays itself during such periods. You will find people denying themselves and saying, "Oh yeah, it's actually terrible," and all that. The likes of let me not give his stupid name power. That fool who says they're ex-gay right now, they're using as a sounding board for the current homophobia. So the 50 parties coming from that, people self-denying, and the fact that the parliament is the way it is, it's the one that's promoting all this. And the other 50, of course, is that all the transphobia and the homophobia is actually promoting, is allowing people to express themselves, because they're like, I might die tomorrow, let me live my queer life today. So more and more people, especially young adults, 21 to about 25, 26, or 21 to 30, are coming out. Not even like saying that I am this, they're just expressing themselves. Because any minute might be your last, so live your queer life.
Do you think like social media is also like a champion in this? Because we see that on social media people portray their transphobia and homophobia, like for example attacking transgender persons, undressing them, having to touch their organs. Do you think social media is also a tool that is boosting the transphobia and homophobia right now as compared to 12 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that now we're in a digital age, a lot of people are hiding behind keys.
Their
keyboards. They're hiding behind that to lure us into spaces where they can harm us. They are using that to spread misinformation, spread hate. It's happening now more than back then, because back then you'd have to get a pen and paper and write your homophobia, but who has the time? So it was kept mostly to like print media, like red paper. But now it's everywhere. So people are expressing their ignorance by just the power of a click. Because you're just a click away from your hate. And us who are living our queer lives, then our lives are just a click away. What will suffer the violence towards us? So the digital expression of transphobia and homophobia is really on the rise.
In what ways do you believe that society can become more inclusive and accepting towards LGBTQ plus individuals? And what role can we play in promoting this message?
The way to become inclusive is to remember Ubuntu. You are because I am. And it's the truth. We don't exist in silo. We don't exist by ourselves. We bring ourselves into a space where there are other people. So the spirit of Ubuntu, which is essentially the heart of our Africanness, needs to be tapped back into. Attitudes, attitudes within communities is what can promote inclusivity. But also, just practically, it's, CJ, you're a human being. If I step on you, I should be able to say sorry. Just basic, simple things of looking at each other as human beings is most important. The other things that society brought in, that you're a man, you're a woman, you're none of the above, those are very secondary. First, it's that we're humans, and then the other things follow. Be it your tribe, be it who you love, be it whatever. People use the Bible a lot, but the center of the Bible is around love. And that also needs to be emphasized. The fact that you look at someone else as a human being is already the number one expression of love. And for me, that is the fundamental thing that needs to happen.
Okay.
How do you see the future of transgender activism evolving? And what changes would you like to see in the coming years?
Yo!
We are in dreamland.
Not just transgender, but LGBTQ plus activism.
Yeah.
You're at the risk of making me dream too much. I think there's been more education and awareness of trans or transgender people in Uganda, but also generally, LGBTIQ plus lives. So the future is bright where I'm seated, because I believe that personally my contributions in sacrificing my life, not really sacrificing, it sounds very biblical, but using my life as an example, I believe will have a positive impact, and already has positive impact, because when you see the way the transgender community in Uganda is currently organizing, yes, there's still disorganization here and there, but remember, we're quite the most oppressed, and there's a lot that we are dealing with. So obviously, even amongst ourselves, we end up, our traumas. we end up bleeding on each other.
Yeah.
But we're now becoming more sensitive to each other and our existence, and there's a way that there's more organizing. And once we organize better, just on the basis that we are trans, we are human, we are oppressed in a quote unquote a special way, then we are able to organize and resist oppression collectively instead of individually. And I'm seeing that happening, so that gives me a lot of hope. But as the queer community in general, I see that because more and more people are accepting themselves, they are able to give out positivity and positive energies that is then helpful in us defining how we move. And that might sound very simplistic, because it's very complex on how we organize as the queer community. There are dynamics of money, dynamics of power, dynamics of different oppressions. So that, I believe, is coming more and more into check. People are becoming more accountable, and where there's accountability, where there's acceptance, less self-stigma, I see that people then begin to work better. And there's also more education, educating ourselves more about who we are, also about who our external enemies and friends are, and just being very cognizant of that then can help us move better. The future, again, is bright, based on how we're accepting ourselves. Because for me, and so I use my life a lot, because the moment I accepted myself, I'm probably one of the happiest people you probably have met. Not so? Yeah. So when people are happy, then things are kind of smooth. You don't have to mind that CJ is popping champagne. You don't have to mind that
Oh, money.
Yeah.
Watching
You want
dolphins.
Yeah, exactly, watching dolphins in Watama. Yeah, that will be such a secondary thing. You'll be like, yes, girl, enjoy. You deserve it, and things like that. So once we put those things aside.
Okay, is it even important to celebrate IDAHOBIT in Uganda given the current state of affairs?
Oh yeah, it's very, very important that we commemorate IDAHOBIT, because this time, more than ever, it's important, because the anti-homosexuality bill is looking to extinct existence of queerness in this country. The parliament is, just trying to erase our existence.
Yeah.
So we have to observe IDAHOBIT, because that was public display of homophobia and transphobia, and we have to take it into account that we are not going to give them power. We are not going to give their hate power. So we need to celebrate this day and say, they've passed the bill, but we are still here. It has not taken anything away from us.
And your message? What's your IDAHOBIT message looking at the theme Together Always,
United in diversity.
Exactly. When you asked me about the future, I was like, when we are collective, it's brighter. And yes, once we are together, it's easier for us to achieve more. Yeah, and when we are diverse, it even should bring us closer, because that means that we have different things that we are bringing to the table. It's like when you set a table, if you use a table to eat, or if you set your food, there's a kamatoke there, there's nakati, there's soup, there's whatever. It makes the whole meal nice. Otherwise, you just eat matoke alone. So the theme is quite befitting, and I send love, I send power, I send positivity out into the world, that as people are commemorating this day, they need to know that as much as the individuals, we are because they are the people. So for me, my message this year for IDAHOBIT is tap back into Ubuntu and take care of each other.
Perfect.
Ooh la la.
Any last remarks for us? After that message, I will just close.
I know, like...
I can conclude this way that thank you so much, Queer Prism, for having me today. I only joked. I only joked, like, when will you host me? And here it is becoming a reality. It is a reality. I love the studios. I love that you've held this work steadfast. And I'm happy to be your mentor, Cynthia, and that you still come back and tap into what looks like wisdom.
It
Might not be wisdom. Yeah, and LJ, you guys are really doing amazing work. And for me, I know the other podcasts, and I don't want other people to feel bad. This is one of my favorite podcasts because it's so lively. I've been myself throughout, and I like that. So I commend the work that you're doing, and keep up the work. And thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you
for
too.
accepting to be our guests. I'm sure people. I posted that the big man has requested, has asked me.
And
So
Oja
the
was
big man
like,
is
the big man. Yeah.
I'm sure they can't wait. Thank you so much, our dear listeners, for listening in. Don't forget to follow and like our different social media platforms at Queer Prism 256 on Twitter and Instagram. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Queer Prism 256 Podcast. Also on Facebook, it's LBQmen 256 Podcast. Thank you.
Chimara.